Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Davis from home, and today I want to do something special with you. I want to read you a story. You know I love a good book. So I was looking through my collection and I found this book called Frog and Toad Are Friends. Now in this storybook there are several mini stories. And all of the stories are about friendship. I want to read to you today my very favorite one. It's called A Lost Button. Now, before we read, I want you to think for just a minute. The title is A Lost Button. The characters are Frog and Toad. What do you think might happen today in this story? We call that making a prediction. You know, good readers like to make guesses about what they think might happen in the story. We don't have a lot of information. We know they're friends, and we know that this story involves a lost button. So think for just a minute. What do you think might happen today? Make a prediction, make a guess. Now, when we read, as we read the story, you might change or adjust your prediction based on new information that you're getting. And that's what good readers do. They'll think about what might happen, and then as they read along, they'll make adjustments or changes based on new information. Now, I love this story, and I noticed right off the bat that the characters, these Frog and Toad characters, they are wearing clothes. And on the cover, I can even see that one of them has a book in his hand. And I realized right off the bat, this is definitely a fiction story. The illustrations are showing me that these are animal characters doing things that real animals can't do. So this is a fiction story, and we know that fiction stories are for entertainment. So I definitely want you to enjoy this story, A Lost Button. Okay, here we go. Now, as we're reading, I want you to enjoy the story, and I also want you to be listening closely for the sequence of the story, for the details of the story, because we also know in fiction stories that there's an order to the events. There's a beginning and a middle and an end, and we have to read the whole story in order to understand what's happening. Okay, here we go. I'm going to just show you the first illustration, and then I'm going to read. Let me grab my glasses, and let's go. A Lost Button. Toad and Frog went for a long walk. They walked across a large meadow. They walked into the woods. They walked along the river. At last, they went back home to Toad's house. "Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I have lost one of my buttons on my jacket." Oh my. That is definitely a problem. "Don't worry," said Frog. "We will go back to all the places where we walked. We will soon find your button." They walked back to the large meadow. They began to look for the button in the tall grass. "Here is your button," cried Frog. "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white." Toad put the black button in his pocket. A sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button?" "I found one." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button had 4 holes." Toad put the button with 2 holes in his pocket. They went back to the woods and looked on the dark paths. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small. My button was big." Toad put the small button in his pocket. I sense he might get a little frustrated soon. Are you changing your prediction? Are you adjusting it as we read on? A raccoon came out from behind a tree. "I heard you were looking for a button," he said. "Here is one that I just found." "That is not my button!" wailed Toad. "That button is square! My button was round!" Toad put the square button in his pocket. You know, when you wail, you're kind of really stressed, and that's going to sound a little different than just saying the information. Frog and Toad went back to the river. They looked for the button in the mud. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin. My button was thick." He's shouting. He's frustrated, for sure. Toad put the thin button in his pocket. He was very angry. I might be too. He jumped up and down and screamed, "The whole world is covered with buttons, and not one of them is mine!" Toad ran home and slammed the door. There, on the floor, he saw his white, four-holed, big, round, thick button. "Oh," said Toad. "It was here all the time. What a lot of trouble I have made for Frog." Now notice this illustration. I can see that Toad is extremely angry, but in the background, oh, there's sweet friend Frog, and look at his face. He's feeling sad. He's probably feeling a little hurt too. And there's Toad. He realizes, oh, he didn't act so nice. Let's see what happens next. You might be definitely adjusting your predictions by now. Toad took all of the buttons out of his pocket. Wonder what he's going to do with them. He took his sewing box down from the shelf. Toad sewed the buttons all over his jacket. Did you guess that? The next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought that it was beautiful. He put it on and jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off. Toad had sewed them on very well. Oh, I just love that story. Did you love it as much as I do? I hope you did. I love these characters. They're always good friends, but sometimes friends don't always get along. But I know one thing about friends. They always want to get back together and make up. That was a really cute story. Now, here's what I want us to think about going forward. After reading, we're going to be thinking about, because it's a fiction story, we're going to be thinking about the events of the story. We're going to be thinking about what happened in the story. And I have listed some questions that I want you to answer after listening to this cute story. So I'm going to read these questions to you, and then in your spiral at home, I want you to write down the answers to these questions. Of course, you may need to go back and re-listen to the story, and hey, that's okay, because good readers often listen to a story more than one time. I do, and sometimes you have to go back and think and reread or re-listen to the story events to be able to answer those questions. Now, here we go. I'm going to read these questions and then we'll talk about what you're going to work on at home. Okay, so question number 1 says, who are the characters? And then above it, I just put main. So when you answer that one in your spiral, you'll just put number 1 and just list the characters, list their names. Of course, their special names, so capitalize. Number 2 says, what did they do at the beginning? So in this, when you answer this question, I want you to write a sentence explaining what the characters did at the very beginning of the story. Question 3 says, which character lost a button? Now on that answer, you're just going to write the name of the character that lost the button. That one will be easy. Question 4 says, when did he realize he had lost it? At what point in the story? Now that might be one that you have to go back and re-listen to, but you can find the answer in the story. Question 5, what happened each time a button was found? Every time they found a button, what happened? Write that down and you'll write a sentence to explain that. Question 6, why did Toad feel sorry when he got home? Why did he feel sorry? What caused him to feel sorry? And then last, it says explain how he showed Frog that he was sorry for his behavior. He did behave badly, but he wanted to make up for it. So what did he do to show his friend Frog that he was really sorry for how he acted? All right, you've got some questions to answer from this book, Frog and Toad Are Friends, the mini story, A Lost Button. So think about the questions, re-listen to the story if you need to, write your answers on your spiral, and of course, as always, send me a picture of your completed work. All right, until our next great story, have a good one.